Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Payoff.
Welcome to a WrestleWar 91 edition of The Payoff. I'm Tom. That's Jeff. Dude, we got a really interesting one to talk about today. But first, how the hell are you doing?
I'm good, man. You know, it's we are post-elimination chamber now. And so we've got there's only one thing between us now and WrestleMania, and that's just the road. And so we are on it. I'm ready for it. Yeah, it's always exciting season. Like of course we don't know what's going to happen. And, you know, there's always going to be a Goldberg appearance somewhere in there, whether I like it or not. And so, but that's okay. We're going to get through it together. We're going to enjoy it, like I said, along the way, and talk about some good wrestling. But before, we've got 8 WrestleMania shows lined up. But before we get there, we had to pit stop at WCW and talk about, I'm going to spoil it now, talk about a 5-star match, like in WCW.
I know. Now I'm excited to cover this one too. And we have a special guest.
Yes, I know. It's been a while since we've had a guest. It's, of course, one of the main events. Since we first had him on the show, I feel like his popularity has only skyrocketed. Unfortunately, I say, or, you know, because of the Dark Side of the Ring episode, some of his family members, both loved and hated, have become a little bit more mainstream and things like that. But we were a fan of him long before he was on AEW, and now here he is with us again today, Brian Pillman Jr. Yep.
All right, you ready?
No reason to wait, man. Let's get into it.
Let's get into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So we're here way back in 1991, Jeff, and really interesting because it's a wild time to be a pro wrestling fan. Now, this actually took place where I live in Phoenix, Arizona, February 24th, 1991. This was at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which still stands to this day. It's a complete dump. It's where the Suns played before they open up their current arena. So still standing there. Still, they get some like high school graduations, and I think they play like the state basketball finals at this building. But Phoenix was kind of a WCW town. They used to run here. So February 24th, 1991, 6,800 in attendance, and it's WrestleWar 1991. There were actually 4 WrestleWars, all available on Peacock. Starts off with a 6-man tag for the WCW World 6-Man Tag Team Championships, which even then they had too many titles. And I know AEW's talked about having, I love that they do the kind of 3-man teams and they do 3-man matches and keep 3-man records, but I don't need 3-man tag team belts. Mm-hmm. So this was Ricky Morton, Tommy Rich, and Junkyard Dog defeating Big Cat and the State Patrol. Bobby Eaton defeated Brad Armstrong. I'm going to butcher that. I'm going to butcher all 4 of these names. Itsuki Yamazaki and Mami Kiyatamura defeated Miki Honda and Miss A in a 6-minute tag team match. Dustin Rhodes defeated Buddy Landell in a 6-minute match. The Young Pistols, Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers, defeating the royal family of Jack Victory and Rip Morgan. Terry Taylor defeating the Z-Man. Vader and Stan Hansen ending in a double DQ. Lex Luger defeating Dan Spivey, also known as Waylon Mercy. That was to retain his U.S. title. The Freebirds, Jimmy Garvin and Michael Hayes, defeating Doom, which was Butch Reed and Ron Simmons. And then the War Games match, a 21-minute match that we're here to cover. So as Jeff said, a 5-star match that we're going to cover. Elsewhere on the show, decently reviewed, 3.25, 3.5, 3.5, 3 3/4, couple 2.5-star matches. So, I mean, really a pretty darn good show in retrospect. Now, Jeff, I'll tell you, since we have a guest, we're not going to have a chance to talk about this during the match. I got to look back more at this. I don't know if you caught it when you were looking through some of the old wrestling observers at the time, but this was also during the time that WrestleMania 7 went from the LA Coliseum to the LA Sports Arena. And I never heard this before, but apparently there was a big controversy with Meltzer and the WWF over the whole Sergeant Slaughter thing. And I'm still like trying to piece this together, and I didn't read the entire thing, but the February 4th, 1991 Observer was titled, by Meltzer, of course, Pivotal Week in the Life of Dave Meltzer. And he apparently wrote about the Slaughter thing. There's like all these letters floating around. He didn't even cover wrestling this week. He just talked about this controversy.
Weird.
Really weird. And I had never heard this before. And again, I was like trying to thumb through it, and I like still don't understand exactly what happened. But if you're interested, try to find more about it. I may Google it or whatever, but I don't know. Really interesting. So
weird
wild
stuff.
time, as always, to be a wrestling fan. But this match, how did we get to where we had to settle this thing in a War Games match?
Boy, when isn't wrestling wild times, you know? So, okay, so we'll start with Sting, and actually kind of Sting and the Four Horsemen on this one. And so you actually had the Horsemen reforming. It was December 1989. It was both like NWA and WCW. So you had Flair, Arn and Ole Anderson, and then Sting in the group as well too, which was kind of, you know, surprising at the time. And so at the time, what, you know, was like Tully Blanchard wasn't a part of the group, like the, you know, and he was with WWF, and they just didn't kind of rehire him and said it was a drug test. Who knows at the time, you know, just, we're always getting worked. And so, which my favorite one a couple of weeks ago was that the Shane McMahon, all the nonsense with him, it was actually a work. And so, but God only knows on that one. So, but which I don't believe that, but anyways, so, Sting, though, so you had them reforming December 1989, like you said, then Sting actually getting kicked out of the group 2 months later. It was Clash of the Champions 10, Texas Shootout. It's because he actually had a title shot against Flair and would not give that up. And so they kicked him out of the Four Horsemen. If you remember, like this was, of course, when as we all know what happened in wrestling, thank God, Sting rescued by RoboCop, as we all know. And so what would we have done without RoboCop back then? And so getting saved though with that. And so it was a whole thing, and it worked at the time. And so Sting though actually got in when this was a weird piece of it too. Like I said, wrestling's weird. When isn't it weird? But like with the Black Scorpion who would taunt Sting, things like that. Ended up revealing, of course, that the Black Scorpion was Flair in disguise. And so because there was a couple matches there, it was actually Sting pinning and unmasking the Scorpion at Starrcade Collision Course that December. So the feud went on for quite a while, actually. And so
don't you think like wrestling names, like I know last week we were talking about like some of the just obscure ECW shows that you were rattling off, like Collision Course sounds cooler than, you know, Full Gear. I think these like wrestling shows used to have like so many better names for this stuff.
Day One. Okay.
Collision in Korea.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I just like the old names better than the new ones. You'd think in 30 or 40 years we'd have come up with better names, but nope.
What, are you shitting on Balls of Fire? Are you not happy with that? Like, you know,
Day One.
Day One. Yep. So, but of course you had, you know, kind of like I said, so a little bit of back and forth with Sting and all that kind of going on. And so there was also the Four Horsemen, like kind of, you know, feuding back and forth a little bit because, you know, or feuding with different groups. And so it was a JTEX Corporation and things like that. And so Great Muta, like Dragon Master, Terry Funk and stuff like that. But they also feuded with Luger, Rick and Scott Steiner, El Gigante. So there wasn't like, one definitive moment where these guys were kind of feuding with each other. It's just, it did work within the storyline of kind of what was happening and stuff like that. And so, yeah. And so with that though, Barry Windham coming, just a lot of different pieces on this one of kind of who was coming back, but really the kind of lead up a little bit as well to that year, that May you had, again, with just the feuds back and forth, all that happening. And so that was kind of Sting and the Four Horsemen, that they were just kind of in each other's universes, if you will, for a little bit in the lead up to this one. Brian Pillman at this point, he was kind of, I didn't really write much in my notes here because he was almost like mid-carding. He wasn't doing much at this time. He had some belts, but like not a lot happening. This match was kind of a turning point for that, which I know we talked about during the match. We'll talk about it after the match. This was a big part of the start of the Rocket being strapped to Pillman to see what he could do at this point. So, but then the Steiner brothers as well too. Half of this match, they had actually been teaming up, since January of 1989. Beating the Midnight Express for the NWA U.S. Tag Team Championship in August of 1990. They actually had WCW rebrand the championships, and so they controlled. They had the title, and they renamed the WCW United States Tag Team Championships, and so had that a little bit. It kind of back, they really just were tag champs a lot. That's really what it boils down to. Kind of what they were and things like that. So because of just these people were feuding with each other in different avenues and things like that, but then it just made sense to bring them together, have the WrestleWar match, and we'll get into it.
I'm pumped. Got a great guest. 5-star match.
Yep, absolutely.
WCW in 1991. All right. If you want to watch along on Peacock, WrestleWar 91, it's the 2-hour and 22-minute mark. It's the final match on the show. Jeff, are you ready?
Let's do this, man. I'm excited for this one. Let's go.
All right. And we'll see you on the other side to break this one down and give you our payoff scores. It's time for the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
How is that?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, let me turn you down a little bit. There we go. How about now?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Cool. All right. There you are.
Yep. All right, just give me
We're
one
here.
second.
We're in here.
All right, hold on 1 second. Pull this up.
Awesome. And you don't have any camera on me. You can't see me, right?
I can't see you, so you can do whatever you want. No one's gonna see. I promise.
I can go back to my criminal activities then.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all right. Hey, I had one guy. that was smoking a joint the entire time we did it. Whatever. I won't say.
I can think of a few guys.
Yeah. It was funny though. I guess he was in California, so technically, I guess it was allowed. I don't know. It was still funny to watch. All right, cool. So let's get that match back up, and we'll get started. All right. Okay. All right, we should be good. You got it? You got the match in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to welcome you, and we'll get started. All right, this is the payoff. We are watching WrestleWar 1991, and we are joined by our very special guest, Brian Pillman Jr. Flying Brian, how are you, man?
Good. I'm killing it. I just got out of the gym. Got a nice pump in, good old Cincinnati pump.
Yeah, well, excited to talk about your career and also look back at Senior, your father, who's in the ring here now. So this is WrestleWar 91, War Games. Have you seen this match before? And if so, when's the last time you saw it?
It's obviously been a while. It's one of those infamous moments in this match. So it's definitely something I've watched back a few times.
Yeah. Well, so I got to tell you, I had never seen this match. In preparation of the interview, I watched it last night, and it was something else. I mean, this was a 5-star match, and so I'm really pumped to watch it with you. And again, just going back down memory lane, forgot just how damn good your dad was.
Yeah, it's unreal just because you look at his career and then the different iconic moments, but all of those moments are surrounded by a body of work that is utterly impressive. Just the range of abilities that he has, going from his clearly more athletic Flying Brian stage, into his more or less of a Flying Brian. As he got older, he realized that name was kind of killing him and tearing his body up. So he definitely started to evolve and change and become a character that was, very captivating.
So what was his height and weight? Do you know what he would have been around this time?
Obviously we're in pro wrestling, so I would say he's probably being billed at like 5'11", 6 foot, 225 pounds. But I want to say in all reality, he's got some, you could tell, he's got some boots on, so in all reality, I'm thinking he's, 5'9", 205,
And then what's
I'm sorry, I didn't know the context of this interview we're doing. I don't want to expose too much.
No. You know what? I think in this day and age, I think
I didn't know how you wanted to analyze this match as far as if you wanted to get into the more.
Let's pull. Yeah, let's pull back the curtain a little bit. I think that's what the listeners want. And for the 10 people still on this planet that are holding on to they're not going to be happy with it.
We can really get into the business side of this, and it just speaks to how willing he was to build himself up. It was such a battle back then for the smaller guys, So every little angle he could take to make himself seem bigger or stronger or more of a legit competitor, because they didn't take the small guys very seriously back then. So he's got the chip on his shoulder and stuff, and it shows that he's tough and that he's fighting from underneath. He always said it's not about the size of the dog and the fight; it's about the size of the fight and the dog. So just a lot of storytelling elements are present here. Like I said, with the tape on the shoulder. We're here in war games. It shows that we're going through war. And you don't go through war without some tape on your shoulder, without some bumps and bruises and some blood, in your mouth and stuff like that. So, and I think we've already got a little bit of color going here. So,
now have you bled in a match yet?
I've bled hard way, as they say. I've never had any intentional situations where I wanted to express color in my matches, but I've definitely had some hard hitting matches. Probably my best match ever was over in England, and we did some things on the outside and traded some pretty heavy hitting, high flying blows, and I ended up with a busted mouth. And that's when you just keep going, and it just adds fuel to the fire. It really adds a lot of spirit and a lot of adds a few stars to your match,
That's right. Man, it was, this whole match is just awesome. So let's start at the beginning here. And for those that don't know, because it might be a fan of your father's that's listening and doesn't even realize that you're in the business. So at some point, we're going to talk about your career and how you got started as well. And certainly bounce back and forth between you and some of the stuff your father did as well. But, you were only 4 years old, if I'm correct, when he passed away, right?
Yeah. So very, very young, kind of just, I more or less grew up without any really knowing him at all, So when people say most people just need to assume that I did not know my father, because there was not much to know or to have learned being only 4 years old and given that he was on the road a lot anyway. So
do you have any memories?
Yeah. I always say in every interview that I'll always remember his voice. And the when he tore up his ankle, there was some very very graphic images in my brain and my memory of the screws and the bolts. They actually bolted a weight onto his ankle, like a cast that was very heavy. to keep his ankle in place because they were afraid that he would try to, run around and do things on it. So just to protect him from himself and also to keep that ankle tight so it would heal. But yeah, it was a pretty gruesome imagery of some bolts and screws sticking out of his ankle and a big black metal plate holding it all together.
Do you ever think about what would have happened if he hadn't been in that accident? Just, and obviously both in terms of life, but, in terms of professional wrestling, I mean, do you ever think of some of those guys that were, really top stars in 97, 98, 99? Do you think about some of the matches he could have had with them?
Yeah, I think that's something I think about probably every day is, how the wrestling world would be different, how many things would be different had he not spiraled from that injury and then into eventually his own death because, and obviously we're sitting here watching this match, if the playback is showing and just all the punishment and the things that he was willing to go through for this business. So it was almost inevitable. I think his heart was too strong in wrestling. I think he almost loved wrestling too much that there was at some point he was going to die for this business, whether he wanted to or not. I don't think there was anything that he'd love to do more, and they say, if you die doing what you love, there's no better way to give your life than for what you love.
Well, one of the things in my research, I mean, obviously I knew that there were some throat issues. I didn't realize that as a child, he had 31 throat operations.
Oh yeah, it was rough. I mean, it was crazy. Just imagine just being a young kid. You don't really get to go play sports. You don't really get to have a lot of friends because you're spending so much time in the hospitals and stuff. On top of that, he didn't have a father either. He grew up fatherless, and he just a tough son of a gun. Just a tough guy that had to make it on his own. Was always considered small. So always had to deal with the small guy kind of complex, all that type of stuff. It's definitely a cocktail for creating a very intense person and someone that was obviously a very great wrestling performer.
Well, and it's you hear that term, the small guy syndrome, whatever. But it's look, if you spend your entire life fighting because you're the smallest kid on the playground, fighting because in his case, maybe the home situation wasn't the best, you're not going to just all of a sudden at 25 or 30 years old stop being a fighter. That's just the way you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there anything that you came across in your father's childhood that was, interesting or challenging? I mean, how much time have you spent really trying to learn about, some of those things that you certainly weren't around for?
I'm sorry. Could you rephrase that question for me?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So, I mean, your father's childhood. I mean, obviously he was playing football. I mean, what did you know about him early on in his life? Maybe before wrestling fans saw him or knew anything about him.
Oh, he was just such a it's crazy because the more I learn about my father, the more I learn about myself, having a similar upbringing in that sense. But yeah, he was very much a prankster. Very much. Always wanting to be the center of the attention. And I think that comes because maybe he was deprived of it during those years where he was going through surgery and was undergoing being sick and all that. So it's when you deal with adversity at some point in your life, you have to make up for that energy that was lost. So I think with all that lost energy, he really made up for it by playing sports and just being a very charismatic athlete, wanting the attention. When you practice getting people's attention all the time and doing pranks, and when you're always in the spotlight as a youngster and you're a troublemaker, that's usually because you didn't have a lot of attention when you really needed it as a child. So it speaks volumes to the type of person he was and the type of person that I've maybe was growing up, and how that's evolved into my maturity as a wrestler as well. So a lot of parallels, I would say, in his life and in my life, and a lot of parallels in the way that we perform our craft as well.
So, two of the guys in the ring right now, Sting and Flair, who were some of your favorites to go back and watch that were maybe from this era? So from the, 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, definitely Flair. Was somebody that I've just always resonated with. Just somebody, because I always felt like I was a natural on the microphone, and I've always felt like my dad and Flair got along really well, and I felt like they looked at the business in a very similar way and respected it in a very certain way. They were very competitive. I like to think of myself and MJF as like my dad and Flair, just couple top guys, young guys in the business, trying to outwork each other, trying to get in the gym and motivate each other and stuff like that. But when you got people like that have the same kind of thought process on the business and how it should be presented and what's important, we know that the emotions are the highest importance of wrestling and not necessarily the amount of rotations we can do in our flips and stuff. It's more about the emotion and really creating memorable moments in people's lives. So I think when you look at wrestlers that are like that, the Pipers of the world and the Flairs and the Steamboats, when you watch guys like that from that era, those are who influenced me and stuff like that.
Have you had a chance to meet Flair and talk to him at all about your father?
Yeah, not so much about my father. It was very brief passing. It was, at different conventions and WrestleCon and stuff like that. I mean, I actually saw him in the bathroom. It was a pretty cool bathroom scene. It was Tanahashi was taking a piss, and then Ric Flair was washing his hands. And I was like, hey, Rick, it's me. Oh, and he said, oh, I don't do meet and greets. Woo, in the bathroom. Woo, I don't do meet and greets. Woo. And I was just like, all right, well, he don't know who the fuck I am, so excuse my language, but you don't know who I am, so it's no big deal. I washed my hands and I shook his hand and stuff when we went outside the bathroom and all that. But it was, it's different. You meet people at different times in their careers, and they may or may not remember. But a lot of that's just due to the physical nature of the business. And I've just gotten started too, so I don't expect Flair to know anything about my career or anything. So he's definitely a legend in his own right. And but yeah, I've gotten to meet Flair a few times, but just recently I was able to get together and meet Jushin Thunder Liger. So that was a pretty cool encounter as well.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that one a little bit later. Yeah, it's funny. I'm laughing. There was something on Twitter in the last week or so. I don't know if you saw it or not. I know you're pretty active on Twitter, and you'll need to make sure to tell listeners how to get a hold of you and follow you. But there was something like, "Hey, what's the most random interaction you've had with a pro wrestler?" And then a couple hours later, someone the guy posted another thing and said, "Okay, does anyone have a story that doesn't involve you taking a leak next to a wrestler?" Yeah. It's like everyone, and the story I was going to post was the same damn thing, and it was really funny. Well, now we got Flair bleeding as well. Hey, so is there of the quote unquote old timers, guys like a Flair, like a Sting, is there anyone that you've met that you were just like, man, I just had the greatest conversation with this person. They were super helpful. Maybe they shared some stuff about your dad. Like, what are some of the just best interactions you've had with some of the old time wrestlers?
Someone I never had thought is that cool was pretty cool friends with my dad. I would have never thought they were that close. Was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They said they had some. They said they had some really crazy stories to tell me, but they had to wait till I was old enough. But yeah, Scott Hall, super sweet, super nice to me. Told me some old road stories about how my dad they'd go get spaghetti and he'd take the spaghetti in the bathroom and he'd wash it. He'd put it underneath the sink and wash all the grease off because that's how serious he was about his body and stuff like that. So when it comes to body guys and when it comes to really wacky nutrition, I've heard a lot of wacky nutrition stories about my dad, about how he ate, and he would he'd order grilled chicken and just squeeze all the grease out of it, pat it down with paper towels, and just a bunch of weird shit.
Well, it's funny you bring up Scott. It's funny you bring up Scott Hall because he is a fascinating person to talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, he's entertaining as hell, and he is brilliant. I mean, I've just over the years just BS'd with some of these guys at conventions and stuff like that as a fan, and for the most part, people are kind of what you see is what you get. I wanted to take notes. I mean, for someone that if you wanted to actually work in this business, I don't know who I'd rather sit down next to and talk to for an hour than Scott Hall. And I said to him, I said, man,
he's funny. Yeah, he's a partier too. He's a partier. He still goes. He's a wild man. But it really is all the veterans. They're just the biggest story in my career are the number of veterans who've reached out, the guys who've already made a name for themselves, and they've got nothing to gain from me. They're just trying to help me out. And it's like, the Kevin Sullivans, like I said, the Scott Halls and the Kevin Nashes that were just absolutely like captivated by my father's like pranks and antics, and just, they have all these stories and cool things and stuff like that. And the Tracy Smothers of the world, the guys you wouldn't even expect that were really close to them. And obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin having been one of his best friends and stuff in the business. And so it's just really cool. I'm very blessed to have those connections with those people, those emotions and stuff. And I'd imagine that as I keep progressing forward, I'll likely meet some more guys and stuff as the wrestling landscape evolves, and depending on where I go and who I work for. I know Jericho had a really interesting story about my dad, about the one time that they met and stuff. So it's really cool with all these everything's a lesson, right? History repeats itself. So if something happened in the past and I've got a little bit of a gateway or an insight into that past that I may not have known, growing up, it's only going to help me advance in my career as well.
Well, and I think too, it's important for someone like you to try and access these guys off the record. I mean, it's one thing to listen to a podcast and hear, what so-and-so has to say, but I mean, to really sit down with them and just, confidentially have a conversation, I'm sure that's where the real lessons for you are going to come from.
And here I think we got Sid Vicious here. Looks like they're getting into the back and forth stuff here. It looks like this might be close to the infamous powerbomb incident.
Yeah, that's coming up here in a few minutes. Hey,
Yeah.
Does taping your shoulder, does that actually help at all?
It depends. I think back then they had some real tape that they use. Oh, there's about the 500th chain head to the chain fence.
Well, there's only so much you can do in there.
Yeah, it's a good spot. Yeah, it's a good spot, right?
Man, and if you watch,
I'd imagine everyone in this match has a bloody forehead by the end of it.
yeah, well, and God loves Sid, but man, you can just hear him like barking out orders in there.
and the problem, which is why this match is probably rated so good, just due to the straight up synergy that all these guys have. It is very, very hard to get, this many wrestlers to kind of be on the same page and fluid and also make it look competitive and a real battle. And as you can see, there's 4 figure 4s on the floor. Now say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, and then that roof is kind of tough too, because like your dad was trying to jump off the rope earlier, and you really can't get any elevation, and obviously that comes into play later too. But it's really restrictive. Obviously they don't do that anymore when they do the NXT War
but
games.
not even for 1 second. Do you watch this match? Not even for a half a second can you say that these guys aren't going their hardest. And it's hard because the camera can only focus on one thing at a time, but as you can see, nobody's getting jumbled up, nobody's, jumping all over anybody. Nobody's bumping on anybody. Probably Sid Vicious is the one that, is kind of all over the place here.
Yeah. So what made you decide to get into pro wrestling? I mean, was it hey, I was born to do this, it's in my DNA, or was there a lot of hesitation?
Yeah, I think the hesitation spawned from just the general society's conditioning to get you to go to school and to go to college, and there's the very much of wrestling isn't cool and this, that, and the other, and you're gonna get hurt or you're gonna go suffer the same fate as your father. So many stigmas and so many things that were attempting to hold me back, but clearly. As everyone should experience in life, there's a time where you realize that not everybody wants what's best for you, and they're going to try and hold you back. So I think there's a lot of holding me back, but at the same time, I'm very blessed to have gotten a college degree and to have had a career outside of wrestling before wrestling. So it's one of those things that I definitely knew for a fact. I definitely gave real life a shot. I gave normal life my ultimate due diligence as a person. Nobody can say I didn't go and bust my ass and then earn a degree and get a nice job out of school. So at that point, I knew after that was not fulfilling. Life's all about fulfillment, right? And It doesn't matter how much money you make, but I think wrestling was the ultimate factor of my fulfillment as a person. Even if I don't make it as far as my father, at least I can say I gave it my best effort, and nobody can take that away from me, right?
Well, and the thing is, there's plenty of people out there that are doing, certain jobs because they think they need to. Oh, well, I was told to go to college and wear a suit and tie every day, not get involved in wrestling. Dude, if that doesn't make you happy, then life's too damn short, and you got to figure out what you're, put on this earth to do and what's going to make you happiest. And, you can't wake up when you're 50 and decide you want to train to be a pro wrestler. So if you're going to do it, you do it. What was the biggest thing that scared you about potentially entering the business? Was it some of the challenges that your father had?
I think the biggest thing is, you're always, obviously there's injuries and stuff, like physical things that might be scary before you get into something, but I definitely knew that coming into this, I wasn't going to have to do a lot of the crazy shit that other people were doing. I didn't think I don't think as Brian Pillman Jr., I needed to do any thumbtacks, to get booked or anything, you know what I'm saying? So like kind of just that kind of idea. I kind of felt safe in pursuing it, at least for a short time. But the biggest fear was tarnishing, Oh, there we go.
There it is.
I guess it's not as bad as it looks, from different angles. But yeah, if you want to go back.
Well, hold on. Wait a second. Yeah,
we didn't catch it.
Here, no. Here comes.
Oh yeah.
There it is. The
No,
second one. Yeah. Jeez.
That wasn't it, was it?
I don't think so.
Because his legs hit the top. It didn't happen yet, did it?
I think he hit him twice. The first one was brutal.
Was this the one where he spikes him, though?
I think he spiked him the first time. I don't think he hits a third one here.
Well, you might want to replay that. Let's see that again.
Well, they replayed at the end. We can always go back.
Oh, okay. Wow.
When he went to the hospital that night, right?
Yeah, I'd imagine that. Apparently his neck was very stiff. Yeah, oh yeah, my Aunt Linda told me about this story. So is that the Great Khali?
No, dude, I don't even know if the Great Khali was born at this time. You don't know who that is? No, it's just great. It's great. I'm usually the young one on these conversations. Meanwhile, I'm 10 years older than you. So
no, I'm kidding. I know his name.
Oh, okay. Oh, dude, okay.
Sorry. What is it again?
Well, I don't know what they called him at the time. I remember him as Giant Gonzalez in WWF. El Giante. Right?
Yeah. Anyway, so my aunt told me about this. He told him to come and get him. So that was a shoot,
Yeah.
That was a shoot injury there, and that was not part of the show. He told him, come and get me, I'm hurt. Those were the words, like, get me out of here, right?
So here you go. Here it is right there.
Yeah. Oh, and it's the feet hitting the cage. That tells the whole story right there.
Remember, he still hits him with another one. I mean, I know it was more on his back, but if he's unconscious or, I mean, look at his eyes are in the back of his head.
Yeah.
So apparently this was the finish from what I understand. Or I'm saying it was supposed to be the finish, but he wasn't supposed to, jack him up that bad. I don't know.
Oh, so this was the finish was called, but Sid just went into a little bit extra detail. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think he was supposed to put him in the hospital.
But hey, I mean, I don't think it's on us to determine, if my father didn't agree to that type of maneuver, So I think Sid is somebody that protects the business, and he'll probably heal up on people today about it, but at the end of the day, my dad could have very well said, hey, you know what, let's do it this way, and I'll spike myself, because we got a lot of guys like that today that they're a little bit unselfish and they want to take a bigger bump, for you. So, obviously Sid's probably a piece of shit, but who knows?
All right, so as we wrap up this match, what'd you think of the match? Looking back at it all, what I guess my question really is, like, when you go back and you watch something like this, what do you think? Do you think good for the time, still good today? What'd you think of it as a wrestler?
As a wrestler, there's just two different types of wrestling, really, and there's this type of wrestling of this era, and then there's the newer style of wrestling today. I want to say that in wrestling today, the fans are paying more very specific attention to one thing at a time, and it is very difficult for like a big battle like this to you know what I mean? Like it's hard to get the fans to pay attention to one thing, let alone 2 or 3 or 4, you know, because our fans today have a shorter attention span, right?
Oh yeah,
but they have a larger attention to detail, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense.
Where the fans here are very, he's doing this, oh, this is so crazy, I can't believe all this stuff is happening at once. Where today's fans are a little bit like, oh, well, you know, they're a little bit more picky, and they'd rather have one very specific story being told where they don't have to, I don't know. You know what I mean?
They want one specific story that they can critique on the internet at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Where this was an all-out war, I think this was a masterpiece of a match. Simply because, like I said, at no point does anybody look like they're not fighting for their life in this match.
Yeah.
But you know how the fans are of today. They're not as easily impressed by the physicality of what looks like very good, solid, real wrestling, that where you're suspended in the brutality of it. You know, they're more looking for a very performance based sequence of events, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm sure many of our listeners do too. So, hey, if the fans want to keep in touch with you, how can they get a hold of you?
Definitely Twitter is a great spot. Catch me Flying Brian Jr. and Flying Brian 41 on Instagram. But, you know, I'm always on Twitter chatting people up. Feel free to shoot me a DM or anything, or shoot me a follow. It'd be great.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for watching this match with us.
No, thank you. That was interesting. That was really cool.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
All right, we're back. Thank you for our guest joining us. Big time star. Watch him on Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, YouTube. Is that where Dark is?
Yes, currently.
They do? Okay. I have never. Have you watched Dark before?
I will watch it occasionally. Yeah, I actually had a really good Dark episode when I went. What was a couple of weeks ago or a month ago at this point?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, and that was the week they actually. It was just enough wrestling. It was 3 hours because they didn't tape the Rampage on mine because that was the week of the premium, or excuse me, AEW. It's still a pay-per-view, and so of a pay-per-view, and so I didn't get that. But yeah, I had a really good Dark with like some really good matches, and so it's almost surprising. Like it's not enough people are watching it. They need to be watching more. But yes, it's on YouTube.
Okay, good. Are most of the guys on Dark, are they guys that are never on TV, or is it a mix?
It's a mix. You'll get some main eventer people on there. I know Adam Cole's wrestle matches on there. Like you'll get it. Absolutely. Yeah, it's worth it.
Adam Cole, baby.
Adam Cole, baby. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
You see him kissing Britt Baker on TV recently?
A couple weeks ago, yeah. It's part of the crew now, the Elite, and so I'm excited about that. And so, big old faction, give it to me. That's I'm a big fan of that, so that's okay. So,
hey, I meant to ask you, by the way, did you hear that Scarlett Bordeaux is killing it on OnlyFans?
Yep, I have. I've seen that one, and we've got there's a big wrestling convention actually coming here to Indianapolis in a little bit. I think she's supposed to be there, and a bunch of people. I just saw they announced the Steiners actually for it, and so it's what I can only describe as a terrible airport hotel that is like probably one of the nicer airport hotels like in that area. And so it's such a weird, unassuming like Wyndham hotel, which, you know, yeah, of course, no relation to Barry, but, you know, it's just weird, like, you know, that there's just this big wrestling convention that's going to happen here. And so, okay, cool.
You go? Are you going to go?
Yeah, I'm probably going to end up there. And so
who are you most excited to meet?
I don't know, because there was all kinds of different names and stuff like that. Like, you know, meeting the Steiners nowadays, like people that I was surprised, like, why are these people here? Like, okay, like, sure. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm there. Absolutely. So,
okay. Good.
But okay, so match on this one, great match. Kind of a little funky ending here with the Sid Vicious and the power bomb and stuff like that. Big part of the to Pillman, but of course, this is like we said at the start of this one. Like this was that really the kind of getting Pillman over on this one, which I think they did a pretty good job of. And of course, we have to thank Brian Pillman Jr. of course for being here when we recorded this one, and kind of had the opportunity to talk to him. I think he's such a cool dude. Like it's such a great mind for wrestling and stuff like that. So it's really good to hear from him. So yeah, but so what happened on this one? Brian Pillman, like I said, this was pre-Hollywood Blondes. This was crazy Pillman. He had the light heavyweight championship for a little bit, which wasn't even really around very much. This was pre-Jushin Thunder Liger match. And so this was really, like we said, and we'll talk about it in the reviews. Like this is the start of the Rocket getting strapped to him. It's happened after this. Like it took off. It was absolutely, we kind of know the trajectory that he was on after this one. And so, Sting though after this one, which was one of the top-rated matches of 1991, actually teaming with Lex Luger to face the Steiner brothers at Super Brawl 1, the pay-per-view for the tag titles. And so the Steiners ended up winning that one. It was actually Ivan Koloff who'd been feuding with Lex Luger, interfered with the match and things like that, hitting Sting instead of Luger. But so Sting ended up feuding with Koloff as well too through that summer. And so, and interestingly enough, Sting beating a young up and comer once Steve Austin, actually winning a tournament for the vacated United States Heavyweight Championship. And so Sting being Sting, doing what he does. The Steiners though left. It was actually about what do we got here? About a year and a half later, a little over almost 2 years, right? Probably about 20 months after this, actually leaving WCW, vacating the World Television Championship, and them signing with the WWF as baby faces, kind of debuting in December of 1992. Of course, myself being a big University of Michigan fan, that was a big part of their gimmick, including using the fight song, like the Victors, as we all know, wearing the jackets and stuff. That's why I always associate Rick Steiner with that Michigan jacket, the headgear and stuff like that. So that's always great. So them debuting 1993, pay-per-view debut also, or January 1993 was their debut in early, and then their pay-per-view debut was late January 93 in the Royal Rumble. And then they had their big match at WrestleMania 9 that April 1993, where they beat the Head Shrinkers, Samu and Fatu. So there you go. The Four Horsemen on this one, though, at the time, though, the lineup after this was kind of Flair, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and Sid Vicious. They did kind of break up and go their own way. Sid left for the WWF. Flair was fired. You had Windham being part of a double turn, including Lex Luger and things like that, where Windham becoming the face, Luger becoming the heel. You had Anderson going on with Larry Zbyszko to become the Enforcers, and then part of the Dangerous Alliance as well too, forming with that. After that, there was Zbyszko, Rick Rude, Medusa, Bobby Eaton, and of course not Stone Cold, but Steve Austin. So just a lot of different things like wrestling. I feel like this match almost gets overlooked a little bit, which I'll talk about in my score because it was so good. And it doesn't make a ton of sense where like the wrestling world just kind of kept going. And so, but Pillman was of course the star of this one. And so this year, so 1991, I got a lot of scores on this one for kind of what happened and those were involved. So Brian Pillman was 44, Rick Steiner was 10, Scott Steiner was 6, Sting was 5, Flair was 3, Arn Anderson was 9, Ole Anderson coming in, unfortunately, and probably I think the highest score we have ever seen on the PWI at 319. Larry Zbyszko, though, at a gentlemanly 38. And so the write-ups on this one, I couldn't find it on the source, but of course, our favorite Dave Meltzer on this one, though. Suffice to say, this is one of the best matches I've seen live. 22 minutes of solid mayhem with a crowd on its feet screaming from the opening of the action. This was supposed to be Pillman's night since the object of this match was to get Pillman over and at the same time have him lose and carried out of the ring. On the surface, trying to accomplish both seem mutually exclusive, but it seemed to have been successful. The finish saw Pillman give 2 power bombs. Finish saw Vicious give Pillman 2 power bombs, the first of which hurt him pretty bad, legit. Pillman's feet hit the top of the cage and was slammed down wrong on his neck on the first bomb and legit knocked out. Although this was supposed to be the finish, he ended up going to the hospital that night with muscle and ligament strains in his neck and is out of action as of this writing, but isn't expected to be out long. Anyway, and being carried out of the ring after ref Nick Patrick stopped the match, Pillman came off as the star of the night, even in losing. The result is definitely an affront to anyone who believes you have to send the fans home happy on every big show. 5 stars from David Meltzer. And I was curious. And so there was a lot of New Japan, All Japan wrestling that he was given scores. So this match, February 24th, 1991, getting the 5 stars. The next time a WCW match, there was no WWF matches in between this one. The next time a WCW match was actually the following year, WrestleWar, actually not taking place until May. But this was the Dangerous Alliance, which we talked about with Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, Zbyszko, Rick Rude, and Steve Austin, taking on Sting's squadron of Barry Windham, Dustin Rhodes, Nikita Koloff, Ricky Steamboat, and Sting, getting 5 stars as well too, which we do have that one on our list. We will eventually get to it. And so big old 5 stars on this one. So Tom, thoughts? Go for it.
There's a lot to like about this. Just a really fun match. The people that are in it, the history of it. I really liked it a lot. I've got this thing overall payoff score at an 8.
Okay.
Again, a lot of really good sports entertainment happening in this. What about you?
I'm the same with you. I think that, like you said, it was just, I say it around here a lot, I read it again to where my brother, you got to be sports entertained. I thought Meltzer had an interesting point. I'm giving it an 8 as well. I think it was an interesting point of you don't always have to send the fans home, or, we all know the lingo of sending the fans home happy. And this is one where you did not have to send the fans home happy because the right guy got over because of it. I think it's an interesting take, especially nowadays with what we're kind of seeing of man, there's so few times I feel like when are we going home happy from a show? It just feels like we end up leaving and having more, questions or just not feeling great about the show we just watched. And so, which is annoying sometimes, but this was one though, again, the right guy got over. That's how it should be. The right guy, what happened will get the right guy over. Now at the time, it's almost weird because you think move it to 2022 and say, okay, putting over Roman or something like that, or Brock, these guys don't need to necessarily go over, but as them winning the right thing, it's hard to say. And so, in 20 years we may know, but we don't have that ability right now, but we do have the ability to look back though 30 years at this one and say, hey, kind of what, did this pay off for Pillman? Yeah, absolutely. Because we know after this, just a mega star, turned into one, had, of course, great matches and things like this. And, has a legacy now as well, too, with his son who joined us and kind of doing that. And so it's hard to not be a huge fan of that. Absolutely. So a couple of 8s going around. So not bad.
Not bad at all. Fun episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next week, we're getting into WrestleMania.
It's time. You know what? Today was all about a war and a WrestleWar, but there's one thing, Tom, that you don't ever have to go to war with. And do you know what that is, Tom?
No.
Your ball hair, Tom. Don't ever go to you don't ever have to go to war with that. And so I was actually out in public not too long ago. I didn't even tell you this story. This is when I was out to breakfast with someone because we had all that snow and stuff like that. And we were sitting there and I didn't realize I had actually thrown my Manscaped shirt on to go use the snowblower. And then I took my jacket off to have breakfast. And so I was sitting there in my Manscaped shirt. And I had forgot that there was on the back as well too. And so I actually had someone stop me and be like, do you realize what you're wearing? I was like, hey, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It should be a part of life. It should be like going to the store and buying condoms. You should never be embarrassed about taking care of yourself and some self-grooming.
So what did the back of the shirt say?
It says whatever's on the front as well too. I forget. And so I'll have to look it up again, but it obviously has the Manscaped, the logo, of course. And then the front It does say balls on it. I forget exactly what it says.
Is it your balls will thank you?
Yes, it's your balls will thank you shirt. Yes. And so, you know what though? Like, it was a lovely breakfast. I was not embarrassed, and you should not be embarrassed as well too. This is a normal part of life. And so, and just like always, it's payoff 20 for 20% off and free shipping. And some of those packages, you get that same shirt that I am willing to wear out in public as well too, because you should never be embarrassed. And you know what? Hey, like, I got me talking to someone about it. So there's nothing wrong about that and what we do. And I'll always talk about wrestling. I will always talk about manscaping, because there's nothing wrong with that. So pay off 20, free shipping, 20% off at manscaped.com.
All right. Next week, we're going back to 1985 for WrestleMania 1.
Number 1, baby.
And we're going to cover David Sammartino versus Brutus. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought it was Junkyard Dog and Greg Valentine. We must have our notes mixed up. Like,
all right. We'll see you next week on an all new episode of The Payoff.